Pokemon, Pokemon. Let's do it.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. We're the Glacial Shield podcast. I'm your co-host Gilded. This is Winter. Today we're going to be talking about Pokemon for our general discussion. Winter, do you want to walk us through our plan for today?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, today, first, we're going to start off with a topic about Gen 1ers. Are they jerks? Are they right? Are they somewhere in the middle? Topic 2, we're going to talk about our favorite Pokemon and our favorite shiny. We're also going to give you a breakdown as why. And of course, to balance that out, we're going to talk about our least favorite Pokemon and our least favorite shinies. The fourth topic we're going to cover is going to be the anime versus the games. We want to go a little more in depth about our opinions on things like what did the storyline better, what did the development of characters better, and what depicted the Pokemon better. Topic 5 is going to be what could advance the Pokemon as a series. We all know that Pokemon kind of has a branching out with one thing extremely different. So we're going to talk about what they could do a little different in order to make the series progress and maybe appeal to more people. And then we're going to talk about the flavor of the day. Is that TCG bubble going to keep on growing, or is it going to burst and leave everybody poor? All right, Aegis, let's start off with topic 1. What do you think of Gen 1ers? Do you think they're right, wrong, or somewhere in the middle?
Okay, perfectly honest, I think they're stuck in the past. Like, it's easy to look back on the old games as being, like, just the classics, the best, but really it's kind of like rose-tinted goggles. You look back and it's like, yeah, they were fun for what they were, and maybe they were revolutionary at the time, but really, like, once you play the new games and you go back to play the old ones, you really start to see the faults and the flaws and like just the cracks in the armor. What do you think?
Well, I tend to think I'm a little more sympathetic towards Gen 1ers. I'm a bit of a classics guy when it comes to movies and things, but I see both sides of the topic. Say the horror movie The Thing. I think the remake is fantastic, but I also know there's people who say the original is the best horror movie of all time. I don't think either side is necessarily. I think Gen 1 brought upon everything we see, everything we know, and on. It was very creative for what it was. I know a lot of critiques I hear are say Mankey is just a monkey, Voltorb is just a Pokeball. But at the time, that was very creative. That was something we had never seen before. So I think the Gen 1ers, especially people who got older and they stopped gaming, they're not wrong because that was what they grew up with and they love it. However, people that say my younger brother started off in Gen 3 and Gen 4, that was their first generation. It's what they experienced. Undoubtedly, I've watched a few videos of these newer generations. The combat, the visuals is all so much better. If that's what you grew up with, you're going to look back at Gen 1 and think, well, that was basic, buggy, and Masingo was probably the issue. Um, but with that being said, what's your favorite generation, and why do you prefer it to Gen 1 if it's not Gen
Okay, so Gen 1 was really fun. You then moved to Gen 2, and Gen 2 added new typing, it added, new Pokemon, new story, it also added Kanto. But my favorite region, actually, my favorite generation, sorry, is Gen 4. Gen 4 fixed a lot of the really, like, the core issues with the combat in the game. It gave you a better story, uh, like more legendaries to fight, more Pokemon, and also with Gen 4, that's when they actually remade Gold and Silver Gen 2 games, and those are some of my favorite games. What about you? What's your favorite?
1? So I am a huge fan of Gen 2. I grew up with Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3, which I believe Ruby and Sapphire. And Ruby and Sapphire, when I was young, was kind of where and that's probably not a fair phrase because I still enjoy Pokemon, but when I was younger, I got to Gen 3 and I basically thought this is getting repetitious. And I was like you. When I played Gen 2, I love the new types. I love Steel. I love Dark. Um, and to me, it was a little more complex. You got things like eggs. You got your first shinies, which we'll talk about a little more in detail later. Um, but you got all these new things that made the game more creative and also have more replayability. I spent a lot more time hunting around Johto than I did Kanto, and because of that, Generation 2 has always had a soft spot in my heart. I have been looking at the Galar region, and if I still owned a Game Boy of any sort, I probably would be pretty interested in that. I love the British history and stuff, so I probably would have loved that generation if I had actually played. So, moving on from that, and I think this is a fair way to segue. What is your favorite Pokemon, and what is your favorite shiny, Aegis?
Okay, my favorite Pokemon is actually it's rooted in my name. Aegis is part of my name for internet things. My favorite Pokemon is Aegis Slash. It's a sword and shield Pokemon that was introduced in Gen 6. When he's in defensive form, he has his shield out. But when he switches to attack mode, where all of his stats get switched from his defensive to his attack stats, that's when he switches out and uses the sword. And just that the model of the Pokemon is cool, the lore, like the Pokedex entries they're pretty fun. And it's a sword. It's awesome. What do you like, Winter?
Honestly, I had no idea that's where Aegis came from for you. I will say that my name actually comes from a Halo reference. I didn't just straight up steal it from winning StarCraft, as many people to assume or get fans. Um, However, my favorite Pokemon is Dunsparce, and I have a hard time saying that because I know a lot of people laugh at that, but I have a fair story behind it. When I was a kid, I didn't know Dunsparce did not evolve. So when I'm talking about the significant amount of time that I spent just looking around Johto, I I spent almost the entire time trying to level up Dunsparce and evolve it. Therefore, I had a level 67 Dunsparce that pretty much clobbered anything I ran into. And then I realized he wasn't going to evolve. And ever since, I have had a very big soft spot for Dunsparce. I was very annoyed when I saw that dragon that almost looked like its evolution come out, and it turned out it wasn't its evolution. Um, so I can understand why people don't like Dunsparce, but for me, it earned its soft spot by being my best Pokemon in Gen 2, and I just spent a ridiculous amount of time with it. On the flip side, that exploration is also the first reason I encountered a shiny. It leads to my explanation as to why my favorite shiny is Tentacool. For one, my favorite color is green. For two, again, back in the day when we played video games on the Game Boy, I didn't know what a shiny was. And when I ran into a Tentacool that was green and a very off shade of blue, I thought it was a glitch. And because of that, I didn't evolve it ever. I kept it in my party. I never leveled it up. I didn't do anything because I had no idea what it was. And again, because of that, Shiny Tentacool became my favorite shiny. Eventually, I had an older kid try to convince me to trade it to him because he obviously knew what it was, but he never explained to me what it was. And I only eventually realized it wasn't a glitch because I ran into a shiny Pidgeotto under the Lake of Rage, and I had no Pokeballs. So as a kid, I raged. And ever since, I have associated the Lake of Rage with me raging out because I couldn't catch the shiny Pidgeotto. What about you? What is your favorite shiny?
That's awesome. Okay, well, first off, Tentacool. I feel like Tentacool gets a bad rap because in Gen 1, Tentacool was kind of like the Zubat of the water. Like, you almost always encountered Tentacools that just became annoying, although they were really nice to kill because they gave you a lot of experience in the game. Uh, but my favorite Pokemon actually is Metagross. So, Metagross is a Steel Psychic type, and he has my favorite typing, Steel. Just really cool introduced in Gen 2, but uh, you know, he looks cool. He's strong. Uh, he's one of the main Pokemon from one like the strongest like Pokemon trainers in the game and the TV show, and he looks pretty cool looking.
Yeah, I have a shiny Metagross in Pokemon Go, and as I've already said, I was not someone who played the later generations, so I have more of affection for Metagross now that I've seen it shiny than I did back in the day. Sorry to cut you off. What is your favorite shiny? I hope you don't say Metagross, so I just ruined.
No, no, sorry, Metagross is my favorite shiny.
Oh, it is your favorite shiny. Oh, I completely misheard you. In which case, there you go. I am very fond of the shiny as well.
No, it's cool. Like it's silver and uh yeah, it's silver. It doesn't look dumb like say like shiny Dragonite, which is just like a dark, weird colored green.
Yep. And I will say that was my experience with those kind of shinies is I am seeing them for the first time. and I had been very disappointed.
Yeah, exactly.
So, speaking of disappointment, let's switch topic to our least favorite Pokemon and our least favorite shiny. Now, to start, everyone out there, I've already said my favorite Pokemon is Dunsparce. Therefore, I encourage you not to take any offense when we walk through what we consider to be our least favorite. Why? Everybody's going to have their favorite, everyone's their least favorite, and it is what it is. Aegis, since I want you to be the one who takes all the trouble of having least favorites, you go first.
Okay. So I also have a funny story. Picture 6-year-old Aegis walking through Viridian Forest, and all of a sudden he walks in the grass and sees this cool green pod thing. What the heck? Metapod. I catch it thinking, oh my god, I'll be able to evolve this thing into, uh, what does it evolve to? Butterfree. Lo and behold, when you catch Metapod, it only knows hard. That's literally all. You can't raise it up unless you switched it with Pokemon in the party. Yeah, so Metapod is like my least favorite Pokemon for just that reason, just being so frustrated as a kid.
Oh, fair enough. My least favorite is also a green. It is Chikorita. And because of multiple reasons, but the main reason I love Gen 2, and I already was not a huge fan of the starters, but I thought Chikorita, when I saw it, the beta design and the final design were probably some of the laziest designs I've ever seen. I thought it was basically a blob with a leaf put on top of it. And then I heard its voice in the anime when I was a kid. And when I was a little kid, I thought some pretty dumb noises were very annoying. And Chikorita's Chikorita annoyed me so much as a child. And ever since, I can't stand it, and I actually have a dislike for it. And that's a very long, deep-seated dislike. However, my least favorite shiny is actually it's Gengar. I got my first glimpse of a shiny Ghastly Pokemon Go, and I loved that blue coloring on it. And I was so excited to turn it into a Gengar because I had no idea what shiny Gengar looked like. And odd exception, I actually knew what shiny Mega Gengar looked like because I had seen a promo for it. So I thought Gengar was going to be white. And when I finished evolving it, I literally switched it back and forth between it and the normal Gengar I had, and I could not tell the difference, even when I clicked on it to make it open its mouth, to make its eyes blink. I couldn't see any color difference. I still can't see any color difference in Pokemon Go when I look at it versus its normal version. What about you? What's your least favorite shiny?
Isn't that just so frustrating? Because I'm pretty sure Haunter has like a really cool shiny model in the game and a shiny sprite, but Gengar
It has a
looks,
bright blue tongue.
yeah, like what the heck? So
Yeah.
Gengar is one of my least favorite shinies, but also Garchomp. You can't really tell Garchomp's like shiny sprite color in the games, but also when you like Mega Evolve it, it turns like this really weird like purple color.
Oh, does it?
It does.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Are you one of those people who's not a fan of the multitudes of shinies?
What do you mean? Sorry?
Well, everywhere I've been, I kind of did some research before this show because I didn't want to, and I found a lot of people said any green shiny falls amongst their least favorites because there are so many. And because I don't have that background, I didn't know that. You, as someone who played further into the games, do you have a distaste for the fact that so many Pokemon are shiny?
There are a lot of green shiny Pokemon, right? Like I'm pretty sure Blastoise is green, Scizor is green, uh, Dragonite is green. Can you think of any other ones?
Espeon, biggest
Espeon is
example.
green. That's right.
And then I mean, again, the problem is I'm experiencing most of my first shinies the first time the game, Go game. So I would have to get back to you on other shiny green ones. I know I evolved Pidove last night, and its second evolutionary stage was Tranquil, and it was green. And I was very disappointed that when I evolved it into um, Fez Pleasant, Unpleasant, I think it was called Fez Pleasant, it was not green, and I had an unpleasant experience evolving it. However, I don't have a proper segue into this next section, so I think I'm just going to start it this way. There are a lot of conversations between the anime versus the games. Most frequent discussions is whether or not Ash, Red, the better protagonist of the story. But there's a lot of other things that get discussed, such as topic of storyline, development of characters, depiction of and which in is better. Aegis, since you have more experience with the games, why don't you start us off with this?
So which one did story better? Well, I mean the games, most of the games, like the story is it's pretty bad. Like, I mean some of them have okay story, but like you're not really playing a Pokemon game for the story. You're playing it because you like to, you know, send out your monsters to attack other monsters, and just that loop, and you can catch legendaries and stuff. I remember uh, Gen 4 had an okay story, and Gen 2 probably had the best story. But I think the anime probably falls into the same like loop where, at least I remember, like the Team Rocket is always like chasing after Ash for his Pikachu. But I'm not sure if you ever heard of the Pokemon Origins series, where it was a 4 episode series which followed Red, and Red actually had a character, and what it built up to was actually just the introduction of Mega Evolution. And at the end, uh, he catches Mewtwo, and Charizard Mega evolves into Mega Charizard X, and it becomes this Black Dragon type, and it's really cool. Really, it was like a big commercial for Mega Evolution to promote Gen 6, but I think I think in a lot of aspects, like there's different like versions of the show. I think the show does it better than the games.
Yeah, and I would theoretically agree with that. I always now I've seen Pokemon Origins, and I will say it does Red better. I always failed to understand why people liked Red more like Ash. I get that Ash is the little kid, is not a Pokemon master, and he makes 5 billion mistakes, and it appears that he has made them for the last 20 something years. But I always found that he was at least a character that you kind of, you know, feel his side of things. He had a personality. He had connections versus Red, who was just a silent protagonist. It was very much meant to be broadcasting yourself onto this little 16-bit character. I also will say something that I think the anime doesn't do as well as the games is the Pokemon. I remember when I first saw Charizard in the TV show, I liked him, but I wasn't that impressed. When I first ran into Charizard in the game, I thought he looked intimidating. When I saw Ghastly, Gengar, they looked a lot more intimidating. And unlike in the game or in the show, Pokemon made noises. Now, I don't know if I'm an outlier about this, but I never liked them just say the name. I actually preferred in the games that the Pokemon made a bunch of noises. Um, and I might be an outlier. But now, with that being said, I actually thought the show was a bit better plot wise. I tended to think the games were kind of followed of point A to point beat the Elite Four, and that was kind of major shindig. Now maybe I was too young to really follow plots when I was playing through and see the whole villain arcs and the rival arcs. But I found in the show I was always cheering for Ash. I was always interested. I remember the episode when the SS Anne sang. Um, when I was a kid, I never saw the episode that saw how the SS Anne. And for a little while when I was younger, I was convinced that was the last episode of the series, and it was pretty traumatic. Um, and only when I was probably in my early 20s did I manage to look up the episode of how they got out of that ship. So I think the show did plot and character development better than the games, but I think the games did. Is that fair to say?
Uh, yeah, I don't think you're wrong, honestly. Uh, I know, but like if you paid attention, well, in Gen 2, your rival is actually the son of Giovanni, and they do a better job of explaining that story in the remakes Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But I
Right,
was like
because
you,
I don't remember that.
no, well, that's something I learned like when I was a teenager. I actually started paying more attention to the games. It's like, oh, there's like an actual cutscene in the game where it showed like, you know, Giovanni approaching his son and then just leaving him.
Oh, oh, there you go. And again, I guess maybe that. comes down to childhood. But I watched the Pokemon show when I was a kid too, and I think I followed that story a lot more closely, and I have a lot of moments in the anime and the movies that I remember as clear as day years later.
Yep. Well, I remember. Do you
Now,
remember? I always remember Charizard in the show being just a pain in the butt for Ash because I remember Charmeleon evolved to fight Aerodactyl, and then he always just hated on Ash, just spit fire in his face, and just would never listen. And then when Ash got to the Indigo Plateau, it was like, oh, hey, cool, he might win. Nope. Charizard goes to sleep. Frig you.
and that was the other thing. I thought the anime, and again, it became repetitious over time, but I thought the anime really made a really good point around work your butt off and improve yourself and do better and still lose once in a while. And again, as a kid, I was stunned when Ash didn't in that first Kanto League championship. And then I was even more stunned when he proceeded to lose in Johto. Now, I think he won the Orange League, or the Orange Island.
He did
But,
win the Orange Lions, you're right.
right, so I guess I thought the show did a better depiction of what happened in real life more. I mean, you can have the best hockey team on the planet, and they're not going to win every season. You know, the Maple Leafs haven't won like 40 years, and they're the best team around. So I'm just saying, you can still lose, and I think that the show did a good showing.
But like Ash, the Maple Leafs sometimes make it into the semifinals or get close, and it's like they might have a chance this year. And like Ash, oh, they lost. Well, why do we even have faith in them, for God's sake?
Exactly. So I guess that was going to be kind of how I think we can mesh into the next topic, because one thing I think the show did good when it did that was it broached a mature topic. You can fail no matter how hard you try. And I personally think that's what one way that Pokemon as a series could advance, both in the games and in the anime. I personally believe that Pokemon would not end if they released a more mature anime. And I know the anime has been branching out. I've seen. I remember I saw an animation of a Chansey and going into some haunted mansion and basically getting trapped in it. And that was really dark, and I loved it. And I wish that the show would take more risks like that, or at least maybe a version that's meant for more mature audiences that's maybe closer to it is real anime, a more mature anime. And I think the games could do the same thing. Like, I thought Gale of Darkness got closer to being a mature storyline with Shadow Pokemon and sort of a true evil team that was willing to, it wasn't their soul, manipulate basically the base soul on to force them to do it. And I would like to see more of that. The second thing I would like to see is difficulty tiers. Now, you're probably going to be able to speak to this better than me. I don't know how it would impact the meta, but every other game is to have an easy mode and a hard mode without it impacting the meta. I would like to see the games have a hard where your opponents are actually difficult and not just like the last 5 opponents you play in the game. Because even when I was a kid, I knew to just level up 50 times before I went to the next gym. It was never an issue. Like, I never had an issue with Whitney's Miltank. I never had an issue with Brock when I was a kid because they just weren't that hard. And I'd like to see that difficulty spike happen at some point in the future. And again, if it's optional, that's fine. But I would like to see it be. What do you think? What could advance Pokemon as a series?
Oh my God, you never had trouble with Whitney's Milk Tank? What the heck?
I didn't. I was that obsessive kid who just always overleveled my Pokemon. I spent so much time in the grass before I went to gyms that, like, when I got to Brock, my Pokemon were like level 16, 17. When I got to Whitney, which I believe was the second gym, my Pokemon were close to like level 30. Like, I would spend an hour in the grass before I would go fight a gym leader. And again, that was just my play style as a kid, that I was just obsessed with my being super high level. Oh, and that was what I was going to say. I thought the Charizard thing in the anime, just to very briefly flash back, was a very cool show of when you had higher level Pokemon. I think in the games you had to trade them for them, but they wouldn't listen to you because they were. I thought that was a cool thing, but I forgot to say that during that section. Yeah, I never had problems when I was a kid, and even when I got older, I had a girlfriend who was into, and frankly, she handed her game over to me that I hadn't played 6 or 7 years at, and asked me to beat the Elite Four for her. So I just maxed out on max revives and max heals and went to town. And even then, I hadn't played the game in years, and I beat Elite Four easily, which she said had apparently been very difficult. So I would just personally like to see a hard mode put in. Whether we'll choose to play it, I believe it should be optional, but I would have liked it. What about you? What do you think would advance the series?
Uh, well, I think touching on the difficulty part for the games, it seems like in the later games, the difficulty has just fallen off a cliff. Like the newer games after like I think it's after Gen 6 and on, there was no difficulty in the games. A lot of the gym leaders only had 3 moves. It was very handholdy. Uh, I think definitely difficulty settings at the start that you want to play on easy, medium, normal, or hard. Maybe you can play like with like no using like potions or your trainers that you face are like 10 or 20 levels above you for all of them, or you can't over level. Those would be good things there. But
Right,
I
if you over level, begin to start not listening to you in the anime.
yeah, I think what would advance the series is maybe something along the lines of like a larger game. And now we had a glimpse of like aspects of that in Sword and Shield, like the Galar region, because there's the wild area in the vanilla game where you see a bunch of Pokemon out in the wild. You can do these max raid battles where you fight big Pokemon. Uh, so I think that's, and then you can also like link up online and like play 3 other players and just fight these essentially bosses. But I think potentially taking like a MMO route, like you have like a Pokemon, and then you race up as a, and then you can go into like raid teams and like maybe face off against Giratina or Arceus, uh, in like WoW style raids or Destiny style raids. I think that would be a cool spin on the Pokemon formula.
I think you hit something that I didn't think of. I think having it entirely, now I know that would be quite a demand, especially for even say the Switch. But having a game where there is no grass, there's just over, really cool.
Yep.
Now, speaking of reaching for the sky and potentially failing, what do you think of this TCG bubble? All the cards that we played with when we were kids, the shiny, or not the shiny, the holographic Charizard being 10, 20 grand. What do you think? Do you think that there's about to be a bunch of very rich people, or do you think there's about to be a bunch of very people buying into this, and why?
It's actually so upsetting and depressing because I can recall having 2 Charizards when I was a kid and losing both of them. And I knew that they were rare and special. There was 2 times. Those 2 times I traded all of my cards, all of my star rares, my holographics, my shinies, my first editions to get a Charizard. And I was just over the moon. And then I lost it, and then I did it again. Kind of like the Michael Scott meme where it's like I'm ready to get hurt again. Like so, I look at the price values of these things, and it's just astounding how expensive they are, and people are paying for them. And I think it's crazy that there's just that value is there in that card. I can see it, the value's there because the market people are actually buying it. Like you look on eBay, people are going nuts. People are buying these cards, go to like these thrift stores or these like big shops that sell cards. The prices are staggering for some of these things, but there's a big market for trading card games. What do you think?
Well, I don't know, but I actually believe that maybe for the first time in this entire conversation that perhaps I have more background experience than you do. I'm going to
Yeah.
start with a topic that anyone listening might immediately realize why I feel that way. I remember having a card that is now worth $10,000 or more, but it was not a Pokemon card. I had Ancestral Recall when I was a kid, which was a Magic card. And my dad forced me to sell my Magic card deck for $5 back in the day to a 30-something year old man at a yard sale who had the world's biggest smile on his face as he bought that deck from me. Um, and that's how I'm going to start the conversation about Pokemon versus Magic. Now, Magic is a very established card game that has rarity that has very complex game mechanics and it has a very loyal game following. And I see it two ways. Because in my opinion, Magic started off as being very player based. The fans were what drove the cards to be valuable. And then Wizards of the Coast made a terrible mistake. They made the reserve list. And the reserve list became the reason why certain very powerful cards that were intended for use in actual printed. And to this day, certain cards that are still have never been reprinted since they came out in the reserve list almost 25 years ago, if not years ago. And because of that, there is a player demand for those cards. It's a game that's being played. These cards can help tournaments where you win actual money. But there's also the fact that once that reserve list was established, and once the players started pushing, oh, Jace the Mind Skull is a very good card that's very valuable, the investors hopped in. And the investors did something smart. They stayed away from Magic. They went back and bought out the reserve list. And when they did that, the prices went through the roof. I've seen information about Black Lotus selling for $100,000 at this point. And I don't think Pokemon has that background. It is purely being jumped on by celebrities that have nostalgia trips. It is not really a player game. I know it's still played. I spend time in card shops or in gaming shops. I know it's still played, but it does not have the demand that Magic has. And I don't think it has that established background of something reserve list. If the Pokemon trading card company wanted to, they could print Charizard the exact same way it was back in the day now. And that is what stopped Jace the Mind Sculptor from ever being 150 years. They just kept reprinting him to stop him from being that valuable. Sure, the original card is still worth $30 more than the newest version, but he's never going to be a $2,000 card. And I think it's going to be the same way with shiny, or I'm saying shiny, holographic Charizard. Eventually, people are either going to realize there's no point in buying it, it's purely a collectible, and therefore the collectors will or the Pokemon trading card company will say, oh my god, there's value in these classics, and they're going to reprint them. That in itself will not drive the price into the ground, but it'll drive it back to reasonable, which means these people who bought it at $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 are going to get run into the ground. And I think what these collectors are doing, they're buying in right now, and then they are reselling while it's still on the up and up. They're doing typical stock trading ideas. They're buying in quick and they're getting out faster when they think it's going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of people who lose money because of the celebrities that are convincing them to buy in. What do you think about that?
Well, a lot of that's actually news for me. I didn't know there was like this whole celebrity side of like people like promoting Pokemon cards or just cards in general to get them to buy into it or just that kind of, environment. Uh, that being said, I mean, Pokemon cards have been steadily like rising in price since they've launched. Like Charizard also hasn't always been, 10 grand for, a shiny like 10 out of 10 print. Uh, so I don't know. I think like anything, that bubble might crack or pop eventually, but I don't think it's gonna be anytime that like soon.
And you're not wrong. And I do wonder because I suspect it's true, and we'll never find out these things behind the scenes. But I wonder if people who have experience in the magic industry are ones doing this, because what's going to wind up happening is they're going to buy out boxes. They're going to buy out what do they call them? Generation One Alpha print. The very first printing of Pokemon cards are going to get bought out. Initially, there's going to be a mass box opening, basically open the vast majority of these original boxes, and then things like Charizard are going to flood the market, initially driving the price down, which might be where people get out. But then there's going to be people who held back and they've held on to these first generation boxes because that's what happens in Magic. They to this day you still find alpha boxes on the market. But as they get increasingly rare, the boxes become so valuable that there's minimal chance of actually getting money back when you crack them. And the investment now is basically buying those boxes, not the singles. And when they buy singles, again, they buy things like Black Lotus because it can still legally be played, and therefore there's still demand for it from actual players. And I think that's what's missing is Pokemon has so much power in comparison to Magic that the original Charizard is pretty much useless at this point. No actual wants him besides the nostalgia and besides the pure value of the card, which means besides the investors, I don't think there's any backbone to why cards are getting more valuable. And eventually people are going to realize that and jump ship, and that will cause the prices to plummet.
If you're buying a box, unless you're a person who's actually going to be enjoying like the cards and is going to keep the cards for sentimental value, the expectation shouldn't be to crack open like box of Pokemon cards or like the old like Team Rocket Pokemon cards, like the Dark Pokemon. Like you're not cracking a box of that to expect to get an increase in value because those things are expensive anyways.
Right, and you can't always expect when you buy a box of cards, even new cards, to be a recoup of money scenario. But everyone's going to buy them for the sake of the gamble. There is that one in three, 1 in 5, or 1 in 10 chance that you're going to crack the one or two incredible cards and wind up making money. The thing
Well,
is
yeah.
in Pokemon, the thing is in Pokemon, there is no reason for the value of Charizard, as an example, besides the nostalgia. It's not a card that can be used in the game, like, say, Black Lotus is in Magic. And the thing is, in Magic, what you get is you get a bunch of these people who are collectors or buyers, or sorry, sellers that intend to only buy these boxes for the sake of driving the value up. And what's going to happen is tons of these boxes are going to get bought out right now, and they're going to get opened by casual nostalgic collectors who just want to see if they can get one Charizard or they can get a Blastoise or whatever the valuable cards are. But down the road, the only people who are going to still have these boxes are the people who are smart enough to have sat on them. And then it's going to come down to a bubble burst or a bubble maintain moment of, are people actually going to buy those boxes for 7 or 8 grand on the off chance of getting a Charizard worth 10 grand, or potentially an entire box of cards worth a total of $500 and losing $6,000 of value? And to me, in Magic, that risk is worth it because that's how you get something like a Black Lotus. But even in Magic, most people say, don't buy the boxes, buy the singles that you need. And there's the key word: buy the singles that you need to play the game you want to play. In Pokemon, no one's buying Charizard to play. It's too weak because of the power. Do you have any
Well,
thoughts about that?
well, yeah. I mean, exactly. You don't buy like a first edition OG Charizard card and expect to play it in today's Pokemon scene because, like you said, power creep is a massive problem, especially because like they keep reiterating and like reproduce like newer and newer cards with stronger and stronger abilities. It's a big problem with power creep. So you can't buy an old Charizard card and expect to play it in today's like Pokemon like scene, TCG scene. It's mainly for a collectible thing or it's nostalgia focused. I mean like that's why if I had that kind of flimsy cash, I would be able to do that, but that seems reckless.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think these valuable Pokemon cards will probably maintain a fair amount of value purely off nostalgia. I just don't think they're going to maintain the value they have right now, which means these people who are buying in right now will potentially lose a lot of money. If you buy a playset of Charizards selling for 10 grand each, if they both lose $2,500, or if all four of them lose $2,500 of value, you've lost 10 grand money purely on nostalgia. And I think people in the Pokemon community maybe aren't as jaded to that type of thing as the Magic card community is, but eventually they'll probably realize what a gamble is. And again, once that realization hits that it's celebrities, that it's collectors that know what they're doing when it comes to this kind of stuff, that are buying in on the hopes that casual fans are also going to buy in so they can make their money, that's when this bubble's going to burst. And if you're the one who's left holding the cards, in this case literally, you're going to lose money. And I think people need to be careful with that. And I guess at the end of the day, my final say on it is, one, I'm no expert. I could be wrong. But two, I would say if you're buying into this, it had better purely be nostalgic and not the expectation that you're actually going to make money off these cards in the future. Because I think the value will go away. Aegis, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I agree. Plus, I mean, uh, like we talked about today, a lot of the games, like they are focused on children. But I think the thing with that is if you're a kid that grew up with Pokemon when it first came out, you really liked the games as a kid, there's a strong chance that you might find some enjoyment playing them now. So if you can get your hands on a copy of, say, like Heart Gold or Soul Silver or Platinum, those are good games. Even X and Y for the 3DS, like they're really good games. Uh, a little handholdy, but I still found them really fun. Even like 4 years ago when I played them for the first time.
Absolutely. And you're right. I guess kind of a good way to close out this podcast is to say, guys, why do you have to let go of your childhood? It's something that makes you happy. It's something that makes you remember the past that you enjoy. Why should anyone in society have the right to tell you to just let it go? Do what you do, enjoy what you enjoy, and don't let anyone else tell you not to enjoy it. I think that might be a good place to leave this, eh? Just
Yeah, I agree, Winter, actually. So, everybody, thanks for tuning in today. I think our plan moving forward is to be we're going to try and be consistent with our schedule. We're going to be guaranteed to stream and record and upload on Saturdays, and we'll be also recording on Saturdays for this general chat podcast, but we'll be uploading it on Wednesdays of every week following. So, I'm Gilded Aegis. Thanks for tuning in.
and I'm Winter. You guys have a great evening.
Awesome. Later, guys.